On this BartenderHQ.com podcast, we are answering your questions. So hey, and welcome to this BartenderHQ.com podcast with me, your host, David Eden-Sangwell, as always, and thank you for joining me once again. On this week's show, we're doing things a little bit differently. I asked our community and also the community on Happy Bartenders Thrive for any questions that they would like answering on the subject of bartending or the bar industry or anything around that. And we've got a few questions which we're going to answer over the next however long this takes. So our first question on this week's show comes from Ford on the Worldwide Bartender Community page, and he asks just for advice for bar managers, please. Now, I've clarified this for him, and he's looking for advice for existing bar managers, not people that are looking to get into bar management, although that's something that we can cover on a future show if it's something you're interested in. But let's get straight into it. I think there's kind of two different ways to answer this. So bar managers can be, as far as I'm concerned, on either defense or offense. So if you're a defensive bar manager, you're trying to minimize risk, you're trying to avoid issues of any kind, and you're trying to kind of maintain the status quo a little bit. You don't want things to get worse, whereas I'm more interested in kind of being on offense. Today, I think, is Super Bowl Sunday that this is going out, so it makes sense in a football kind of American football kind of way. But here we go. So I've made a few little notes which I'll run through quickly. So someone that's working on defense. Now, both of these can work, and you will need to have a proportion of both, like a balance between them. I would say it's somewhere like 20-80 in favour of offense. So here's my kind of points on it. So if you're being defensive as a bar manager, you will be specifically really careful with drinks margin. So you want to make sure that every drink has got a great margin, so you'll be aiming for that 75-80% GP on every drink, which means that between 20 and 25% of your drink's sale price before tax is pour cost. So if your drink costs £5 plus tax, your drink cost should be between £1 and £1.25, something like that. Now, it is important, of course, as with anything, that your pour cost is right, but if you get really, really into the weeds with it and you're tweaking stuff, you're like, oh, can I save a couple of pence a bottle on vodka here? Can I save, a couple of cents a bottle on my liqueurs? Yes, it will make a little bit of a difference over the long term. Overall, you might be able to save yourself, into a sort of thousands of pounds across a year, maybe. But it will be low thousands. It's not going to be, it's not going to be massive money. However, when we come to offense, I'll tell you why. If you're spending too much time onto that, it might actually be counterproductive for you. Concern about theft. Now, I know there's a lot of bartenders and bar managers that are really concerned, especially bar owners, probably even more than bar managers, who are really concerned about bartenders giving away free drinks, which I think is wrong. It shouldn't happen. There's a lot of people that spend more of their time watching what the bartenders are doing and making sure that they're not giving their friends free drinks or giving away shots or what have you, than actually worrying more about the business itself. So that's another thing that's quite a defensive side of things. You need to be aware of what your bartenders are doing, but if you're spending a huge amount of time doing it, then that's going to impact what you can actually do with the rest of your time. And then the last one would be like micromanaging your bar team. So, giving them really detailed like breakdown lists and then checking everything at the end of every night, and then get everything signed off. Yes, you need to have accountability in the bar, and you need to have procedures in place so that, for example, when a manager's not around, the guys still know what is expected of them. So if you're spending a huge amount of your time making sure that the bartenders are doing the job the way that you want it, rather than trying to find the best way that they can do a role, that is probably going to be counterproductive as well. So, in terms of being on the offense as a bar manager, maximising sales is number one. So the bar manager's job is to make sure that the bar is profitable, as far as I'm concerned. So making sure that your drinks program is in the right place, there and thereabouts. As I say, if you're maximising your sales, you don't need to worry as much about every penny that you're making in margin per drink. If you're going to spend like 12 hours just tweaking and looking through price lists and all this sort of thing, you're going to spend more time on that than you could have sold like an extra 50 cocktails or something like that, and that cash margin that you're going to make from those extra drinks is going to make far more difference. And it's also important as a bar manager to be looking at when guests are coming in, how you're bringing them into the bar, what sources are they coming from, so almost like a marketing perspective, or working, if you have someone that's dedicated to marketing your bar, working with them to make sure that everything, the way that the bar is structured in terms of your marketing, is working. I think it's far more productive to spend your time working on bringing new guests in and making sure that the guests that you have there already are having a great time, than worrying too much about the pennies on each drink margin, if that makes sense. Hiring fast and firing fast. Now, unless you already know a bartender that you're about to hire, you are essentially guessing when you bring them into the bar. I am a proponent of trial shifts. I think they should happen. I think they are a useful tool for bartenders, but they're also not the be all and end all, because you're going to have a lot of people that come into your bar. They're not going to know on their first night where is anything. They're not going to know your specs. They're not going to know what's expected of your bartenders in terms of serving your guests behind the bar. So they're not going to have they're not going to have the style of service necessarily that you want from day one. They're certainly not going to have the pace that you want because they don't know where things are. They're not going to have the knowledge that you want because they're walking into a bar full of ingredients they might have never seen before. That doesn't mean they're a terrible bartender. That just means that they haven't yet learnt these things. And I would always advocate hiring more for attitude, because you can train the skills to your bartenders, than worrying too much about what can they do already. Yeah, sometimes it's really helpful to be able to have someone that can hit the ground running, but in other circumstances, if you have the right kind of progression and a system in place where when your bartenders leave, there's someone that's already there to replace them into a more senior role, then you're not going to have those issues. When I say fire fast, that is literally what it sounds like. In the UK, we have like a 3-month probationary period where you're basically kind of getting to know the bar, getting to know if you suit the bar, if the bar suits you, and during that time, there's no real kind of comeback, I guess, if someone, if things don't work out. I would never suggest that people are kind of pushed out without any without warning and that sort of thing, which is what the law lets you do in this country. However, what I would say is that you have got a kind of risk-free period that you can bring people in, see how they actually get on, see if they're progressing. But if it takes you 3 months to work out if someone actually can do the job, then that is more of an issue for you. Training your team so that you can trust and empower them. So this kind of is the converse of worrying about theft and also the micromanaging your bar team. So it's really important that you put time and energy into developing the bartenders that you've got, because that is the sort of thing that's going to help retain them within the business. It's really important that the bartenders feel valued and that they're actually growing within the industry. Now, it's also important to remember that not everyone that walks into your bar looking for a job is going to want to be a career bartender. I know career bartender is what a lot of us identify ourselves as. Certainly what I did until I moved into the other side of the industry, to be honest, into drinks development and into now the wholesale side. That being said, bartenders come from all walks of life. You've got bartenders who are literally just taking a job while they're a student to make sure that they can make enough money to make ends meet during their studies to do something else. Not everyone wants to be a bartender for the rest of their lives. However, the ones that do are the ones you want to identify. They're the ones you want to progress into the higher roles, into bar supervisor and potentially bar manager roles in the future. So make sure that you focus on them. You're also, for every bartender that you train better, they're going to make you more money behind the bar. That also helps you maximising sales, which was point number 1 of being on offense. Focusing on a great guest experience and reputation. So this is another thing where I think I've spoken in the past that my philosophy around bartending is that your job is to make the bar money. That is your number 1 role. And everyone kind of worries that I'm not talking about giving great service to the guests and making amazing drinks. It turns out that's not actually the bartender's job. The bartender's job is to make the bar money. All of those things are just tools that we can use to make sure that your guests do return, which makes the bar more money. That's kind of my way around looking at it, and I know it kind of doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not as romantic as the way that some people might talk about it, about just crafting the experience. I understand that we need to make great experiences for our guests. These great experiences are something that we are creating in order that the bar makes money in the long term. If the bar isn't making money, if we're not converting the guests that walk through the door and the liquor that we're buying from the wholesaler into drinks and then into money for the bar, then we ain't making enough money. The business ain't going to stay open, and you're going to be out of a job regardless. And the last one I've got down on this list is using your network. So as a bar manager, you have probably been in the industry for quite some time. You will have met bartenders from all over the place. You will probably know a lot of the drinks reps from the distributors like Bacardi or Brown-Forman, or from Diageo, who look after your area. Now, those people are great to have within your network, and networking is a tool that you can use in any business. So this is not even just something related to the bar industry, but you will have a network within your local bar industry, which is going to be vital to you to make use of. So you will know if there's a bartender in another bar who is great, but not necessarily enjoying their style of service, who you may be able to bring into your team if it's a better fit. You will know when there are new releases coming from different drinks brands. You will know when there are special offers from your distributor and your wholesale reps. You will be able to bring more guests into the bar. Your network will extend certainly beyond just the bar industry as well. You'll know your guests that come to the bar. You'll know what their jobs are. You'll know what their careers are, what they love, what they enjoy. And that is also the kind of thing that will help you to build long-term value within your bar, because if your bar uses one of your regular customers as their lawyer, for example, if there happens to be a lawyer among your regulars, that lawyer is going to be more invested in making sure that things work out well for your bar, because it's where they drink, they know everyone, and they actually care about what's going on, rather than just some faceless legal firm. If you have a guy that comes in who's a graffiti artist and you need some stuff doing for your walls, using those people, you might even be able to get a deal on it. You might be able to exchange a great bar tab for some artwork. You might be able to do some bartering, essentially. So making sure that you make use of your network, not just within the bar industry, but also within the wider community around you. You'll know who to market events that you have coming up to, and all that sort of thing. So I'm hoping those are some things that make sense, just advice for bar managers. I think that's some really useful stuff. Overall, I think it's more about being positive about bringing more money into the business and using these different things as tools for that, more than it is making sure that you're reducing waste, reducing the risk of theft. Because let's be completely honest here, with I know we don't want bartenders to steal, and I know we don't want to be wasting product. That makes no sense as a business. However, let's say we're losing a couple of bottles of vodka a week. At cost price, that's probably going to cost you maybe £30. But if you've got a engaged team that is bringing more guests into the bar, who are all spending money, you're going to be taking far more than £30 in additional revenue. So for the bar, it's a net gain. So I'm not saying ignore all the other stuff. Keep an eye on it, but it doesn't need to be your main priority from day to day. The actual risk, sort of the hazard of what you risk by ignoring that, is probably a lot lower than the potential upside from focusing on the positives and being on the offense in your bar every single day. The next question on today's show comes from Lily in the Happy Bartenders Thrive forum on Facebook, and she asks, can you give advice on staying in the game and keeping energy levels up during shifts? Yes, absolutely. So this is a kind of an interesting question, because obviously bartenders work quite long hours. Bartenders have famously not been great at self-care in the past, although that has changed probably over the past 5 years more than it has a lot before that. Bartenders have always had a reputation for being party people, out drinking, partying all night long, heart and soul of the party, and that has been a deserved reputation for many years. These days, there are so many more teetotal bartenders. As I say, I barely drink anymore. I taste stuff occasionally, but I don't really actually sit down and drink alcohol. I don't remember the last time I actually sat down and had a full drink, apart from maybe Christmas Day. And And I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is self-care and making sure that you are in the right physical shape to be able to work those shifts, because just going to the gym a few times a week is going to get your cardiovascular up, which is going to make a massive difference to your endurance behind the bar. It really does make a lot more difference than you'd think. So before Christmas, I was doing some quite long shifts bartending. I would be doing sort of 1 p.m. through till close. I don't take breaks. That's one of the things that actually for me works best for me, is that if I stop, sit down, eat some food, I actually lose my momentum. So I don't recommend this for everyone, but it's always the way that I kind of worked, and the way that I came up through bartending was that you took as little time off as you could, so that you could make sure that you were looking after those guests, or typically I would have been working a dispense bar on those shifts, so I wouldn't want to come back to the bar and have it in a mess, or someone else has been looking after it for an hour for me and things have been moved around. When I work in a dispense bar, I need to know where everything is. So one of the really cool things for me in order to keep my energy up is actually making sure that my workspace is kept clean and tidy, and knowing that everything's been put back in the right place when I've used it. That just takes a huge amount of the stress out of the shift for me, and I think the stress is one of the things that can really be quite exhausting at times when you are working behind the bar. I've always found that it can really, really get you down, and it will make you tired before the end of the shift if you are not happy with your workspace. So make sure that bar is set up to the nines, exactly the way that you want it. I'm not saying overproduce on garnishes and fresh stuff that's going to go off. Don't over batch. Just batch enough for your shift to get you through the busy period at least, and probably get you through the rest of the shift to the end. But remember that once that busy period is out of the way, you have got time to reset and to reproduce if you need any mixes made up or anything like that. I think the other thing is loving what you do. Now, as I say, I'm not saying that you shouldn't stop and have a bite to eat during your shift, but for me, it's easier to grab a bite in a 2-minute sort of lull in the shift. But loving what you do, the reason that I will go through those whole shifts without taking breaks is typically because I really love working behind the bar. I love the kind of adrenaline of it when you do get super into the busy period of service. I love it when I'm working on a dispense bar and I've got tickets lined up and I can look across them all. I think you get into a kind of a zen mode. One of the biggest things, I guess, with that as well is actually just knowing your drinks, knowing those recipes, so that you're not having to stop and think about what you're doing. If your body can go into autopilot mode because you know this stuff like the back of your hand, it's going to make a massive difference. So do spend the time to make sure you learn these drinks backwards and forwards. Do grab tests for yourself during quiet times. I've always found that I find jigger pouring really, really quite tiresome, and it kind of makes everything feel like it takes twice as long. So I always used to challenge myself as well on the long shifts, because we had a kitchen display screen which would put all of your tickets up onto a TV screen, and you bump them off of there, but that would also keep track of things like your average ticket times. I'd always challenge myself to get my average ticket time as low as I could, and I'd hate it whenever it crept up by a second during the busy times of the shift. Some of my busiest shifts, Mother's Day, we had a full restaurant of 500 seats a few times in the day, and I think my average ticket time at Fridays was, I don't know, 2.5 minutes or something to get out whatever cocktails, milkshakes, beers, for tables of 4 and 6. No problems with that sort of thing, but I do think kind of knowing your environment is really, really important to this sort of thing, and making sure that you know your drink specs, but also making sure that you actually get enough sleep before the shifts. Try not to have super late nights, trying to certainly have days that you don't drink every week, probably a couple of days together if you can do it, and just making sure that you love what you do. Hope that helps. And here we come to the final one, which actually really ties back into our first question. This question comes from Aaron, and he's on the Happy Bartenders Thrive forum, and he asks, thoughts on poaching bartenders from other bars. Now, this is kind of a weird, like, taboo subject almost for some bartenders, so people absolutely hate the thought that other bars will come into their bar and try and hire their bartenders. Now, if you have to worry that other bars are going to come into your bar and hire your bartenders away, then it means you're not looking after your bartenders well enough. That is what it comes down to. You're either not paying them enough, so they want to go somewhere else and be paid better. You're not developing them, so they don't feel fulfilled. And they want to go somewhere else where they might have more authority, they might have more responsibility within the bar, they might have, it might just be a good stepping stone to a next career. Where you have to worry is if other bars can hire your bartenders to come in and be a bartender on the same wages and on the same kind of terms that you are, because at that point it just means that they don't like working for you. I honestly, if someone come into my bar and wanted to hire my bartenders, number one, that's quite flattering because they're saying that these bartenders are great and I want them working for me. So that's quite a flattering thing. That means that you've hired well in the first place. Number two, I really don't mind because I know that I look after my staff. In any bar that I work, I've always had a really good rapport with my staff. I always try and make sure that they make as much money as they need to. If they're not getting the hours, then it's probably because your bar's not busy enough, which means you're doing a terrible job at bringing people into it. I think what I'm trying to say here is if bars are coming into your bar trying to poach your bartenders and your bartenders want to go, then that's on you because you're not making the bar good enough for them to want to stay. Now, I'm not saying we have to pay ridiculous wages to bartenders. I'm just saying that bartenders should be paid what they're worth, and if it is a case of another bar wants to pay them more to do the same role, it comes down to you. If that bartender, it has loyalty that has been earned from working with you, then they will probably approach you and say, look, this is what's happened. I could really use the extra money. This bar's going to offer it to me. Are you able to match it? Otherwise, I might have to consider this role. And I think that's absolutely fair. And if that bartender does bring value to your bar, you should probably consider giving them the pay rise. And possibly bumping it up above what that other bar wanted to pay in the first place. I think the best thing that you can do to avoid your bartenders being poached is probably, number one, pay them properly in the first place. Number two, make sure you earn their loyalty. Now, you don't deserve loyalty for giving them a job. You need to earn their loyalty by being a good boss and looking after your bartenders. Number three, I think you need to make sure that you're giving value to your bartenders and making sure that they want to stay with you. But also, you need to take it as a compliment that other bars want to hire your bartenders. So we're going to wrap it up there for today. We've done 3 questions that have all come from Facebook groups. Thank you very much to Nicole for letting me post in the Happy Bartenders Thrive forum. It's super engaged. I was really impressed with how many responses they got straight away. So do go and check that one out. I don't know how open it is. It's a much smaller group than the Worldwide Bartender community. We're somewhere around 9,000 members now, and that group is around 350. But they've got some great conversations going on there, and that's what it comes down to, a lot more than pure numbers, 100%. So, Nicole, thank you so much. That's it for this week's BartenderHQ.com podcast. Catch us next week, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the thing, and hit the bell. Do all the stuff. You watch other YouTube channels, you know what you need to do. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, do come and check us out on the YouTube channel, because we do put cool stuff up there that you can't really get from the sound, like flair. It's not an audio medium. Check us out on TikTok too, at BartenderHQ. Cheers!